Alright, hello again, Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College. I'm back on the Mac, and I'm in Chapter 4, a guided tour of Xcode 7. We've gone over a lot of this stuff last semester, but you know what? Review never hurts. So, as mentioned, all of the iOS examples in this book will take place using the Xcode 7 development environment. Alright, so they mentioned that the first time that you start up Xcode, you will see something that looks like this. All right, and it says if you don't want that anymore, there is a little arrow down here near the bottom of the screen that you can check, and if you check that, it's in here. But if you check that, it's going to come in here and say it won't show the window when you open this up. All right, I just advise you to just leave it the way it is. Okay. The other way that you can open it up is to do Window, Welcome to Xcode. Well, the way we're used to doing it is we've got Xcode down on our dock down here. We single click it, which should start it up. Now, unfortunately with mine, it has a tendency, as you can see, it bounces up and down for a few hundred times, and then it decides that it's going to hopefully start up. So here we are. All right, you can see my bullseyes from last semester, etc. So that's all stuff that you have seen previously. So when it comes up like this, we'll typically be doing one of two things. In the next chapter, I think it is, we will go and actually look again at a playground, but for now, we'll come up to create a new Xcode project. And as you can see, what comes up here is we've got a bunch of different things that are being shown right here. So let's take a look at these because we really didn't much last semester. So I've got this up on the screen, but I'm basically going off of what's on the PDF, all right, or the book. So the first thing we see here is a master detail application right there. And that will allow us to create a list-based application. Selecting an item from a master list will display a detail view on that particular selection. All right, we'll look at that a little bit later on in the semester. Page-based application, which creates a template project using a page view controller. It's very similar to creating pages, you know, in a book. All right. Tabbed application. Creates a template application with a tab bar that appears across the bottom of the device and can be programmed to do different things. The one that we're going to be concerned with, basically, as you know, will be the single view app for most of the semester. There's also Game down here, which creates a project configured to take advantage of SpriteKit, SceneKit, OpenGLES, and Metal for the development of two-dimensional and three-dimensional games. But what the author says is for right now, for our purposes, let's just select single view application. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to select that and then click next. Again, this is all review for you, I realize that. And they want us to come back to the old hello world, but it will be a hello world, for lack of better words, with a little bit of a twist to it. So I'm going to come in here and type in hello world. All right. And that'll be our product name. All right. For the organization name, that text will be placed within the copyright comments of all source files that make up that particular project. All right. Then next we've got the organization identifier, which is typically the reverse URL of your website. So again, typically I would say this, edu.blackhawk.jscott. All right, and if you don't know what you want to put there, again, you can leave it set to edu.self as well. That is just fine. Hopefully you notice that once we did this, what the system did was it combined our organization identifier with our product name, all right, and that's what it puts into this bundle identifier down here. All right, the language, well, remember, there's two languages that are actually supported here. There's the older Objective-C, all right, and there's Swift. Well, Apple does consider Swift to be the future of iOS development. That's the one we're going to use in this entire class. All right. And the use core data we'll get to later on in the semester. We really, for right now, we really and truly don't need to click the include unit tests or include the UI tests. We can leave them because they're checked by default, and that's fine. And for the device right now, we'll keep it at iPhone. All right, so I'm going to click Next. This will bring up our main Xcode window that you can see on the screen right here, or you will see on the screen right here in just a minute. And you can see in the book on page, whatever page that is, it looks like the top of page 12 also in your textbook. So if you look at this, we're in chapter 4 and we're only 12 pages in, okay? All right, we don't need a Git repository. Typically, we'll save stuff to our desktop. So I'm going to click here, create, and in just a second, it will be created. And it'll show us basically, again, the main Xcode window. Okay? All right. Now, the author also mentions here on page 12, he says here, before proceeding, let's take some time to take a look at what Xcode has done for us. First, it created a group of files over here, as you can see. All right. We've got basically our file here, which brings this stuff up. We've got our Hello World folder, and inside of there, we've got an appdelegate.swift, a viewcontroller.swift, and a main storyboard. All right. The main storyboard file, as you know, is used by the interface builder tool to hold our interface. Okay. The appdelegate.swift we'll get into later on in the semester, but it is a code file that's created for you. For most of the stuff that we do in this class, we'll be working in like the viewcontroller.swift and changing code that's in there. Now, as we work our way down, we see we've got the assets.xcassets folder. We've talked about that before. And what that is that's what's going to eventually hold all of the image files that we use for the program. Underneath that, we've got launch screen.storyboard. So if we were to want to have like a splash screen or something when we start the system up, it would go in there. Then we've got info.plist. And again, the stuff that's in here, we looked at this a little bit last semester. These are property lists which contain key value pair information. All right? And for now, that's plenty to know. Okay? We don't really care about it really any more than that, to be honest with you. All right? So there's a bunch of different stuff here. For instance, if we didn't want to allow portrait, we could uncheck this. If we wanted portrait only, we could uncheck these two right here, etc. So there's some stuff that's in here that we'll eventually go back and take a look at some time or another. All right. By their very nature, as mentioned on the bottom of page 12, iOS apps are typically visually oriented. All right. So Apple recognized this, created a tool called IB or Interface Builder, which allows a visual user interface to be constructed by dragging and dropping components. You know this already. All right. Xcode pre-created a number of files for the project, and one of those, as we already mentioned, was the storyboard. All right. And if we bring this up, so if we click on it under the main.storyboard right here, it brings it up, or it will bring it up shortly, in here. And they mention it in the center of this. It says, there's a visual interpretation, for lack of better words, of everything that's going to go in here. And we will be taking a look at all of this as we go on. All right? Right now, as mentioned in the book on the bottom of page, I don't know, like must be 13, the author mentions this is a visual representation of the user interface of the app. Initially, this consists only of what's referred to as a UI view object. All right, what's a UI view object? Well, if you look in here, that's what's in here right now. And you might say, well, I don't see anything in there. This is all stuff that's basically been predefined by the system for us. Okay? Now, before we go on, let's take a look at the stuff that's up on the top of the screen. Remember, this area in here is typically referred to as your navigation area. If you click that first icon that you see right there, it shows the Project Navigator. So it doesn't change because that's already up. If I go to the next one here, it shows the Symbol Navigator. Okay? And it's got a bunch of other stuff in there. I'd be lying to you if I told you what all that stuff meant because I don't really use that one very often. Next, we've got the Find Navigator, which will allow us to go and look through a big project for different stuff if we want to do that. After that, the fourth one over is the Issue Navigator, and that one becomes more into play when you have problems with your code. All right. Next to that is the Test Navigator. So if we were doing UI tests, we'd probably be using that one more. Next is the Debug Navigator. We'll look at that in a little bit. Then is the Breakpoint Navigator. It is possible for you to set breakpoints in your code like it is with any other editor. And finally, there's the Report Navigator, which again, we'll look at some of these as we go on in here. All right. You also know that this thing that's in here, this shows all the stuff for your project. If you don't want to show it, if you go down way down here towards the middle of the screen, if I click here, it goes away. All right. All right. You also know that as we look up over here, we've got 6 different buttons that are over here. The first button here, if I put my mouse over it, it says show the standard editor. Well, that's the one that's actually showing right now. If I wanted to bring up the assistant editor, and you know this from last semester, so in other words, if I wanted to set this thing up that's in here right now so that I could show this and some code, I can click right there and I can bring up the assistant editor. Okay? If I decide, oh no, I don't really need that assistant editor code, I can click up here on the X as soon as this stops. And as soon as I click on that X, the system will go back again and it will look the way that it did previously. Again, I've got all sorts of stuff. I've got to clean this system up. I don't know why it's doing that right now, but it is. All right. If we look at what else is over here, and I want to, if this thing would just stop. There we go. All right. Next is our version editor. I don't ever deal with that. But the 3 things that are here are important, as you know. The first one, hide or show the navigator. So when I click this, let's go back to here. Now watch this when I click this first button. As you can see, it goes away, and it's a toggle. Show it, remove it, show it, remove it, etc. The next one that's down there, that hides or shows the debug area, which is down here by default. So again, show it, hide it, show it, hide it. You get all that. And the last one is for your utility pane, which is down in here. Show it, hide it, etc. All right? In our utility pane, you notice we also have 6 icons down here. The first icon, as it says, shows the file inspector, which we're not going to deal with right now. Next is the quick help inspector, same thing. Next is the identity inspector. Next is the one you'll probably use the most often, which is our attributes inspector. Then we've got the size inspector, and finally, the connections inspector. All right. And you all know this, that if I do want to, and I think this is what the author asks us to do, is a couple things here. The first is they ask us to come down here and put in a label and put it somewhere around the center of the screen. Double click on it. Remember, we can either double click on it or we can go up here and change it here, but I want to change the text on it to Hello World. Now when I did that, it's too much text for the size, so I can stretch it out over here. And I can stretch it out over here. Now if I need to, I can also make sure that it's still in the center, right where I want it to be, etc. And there it is. All right. And we're supposed to click in this area that's right here. Click in the background, and they want the background to be a color other than white. So if I click here, I can grab something else, and I'll just grab this kind of turquoise, and there you see it. Okay? All right, so what I've done is nothing really big, fantastic, or anything else, but just so you can see what's going on here. All right. Again, I'm trying to follow along pretty much as far as I can with what's shown in the book here. All right. So they told us to change color here on the bottom of page 14. I already did that and showed you how to do it. Then they start talking about adding objects, and they have you add a label. I guess they used a green color in figure 4.9, which is in your book on page 15. I used blue. There's no difference. All right. Then again, if you remember this from last semester, they have us come in here, and once we do, they have us click the T that's in here so we can change the font type. All right. So we want to change it from System. We want to click here and choose Custom. And they want to, in this case, they want a Georgia bold font type. There's Georgia. And they want us to boldface this. You can already see I've got to widen it out a bit. All right, so let's center it in there. And under style, instead of regular, we want to choose bold. Okay? Pretty much is looking the way that it does in your book on page 15. All right, so that's nothing new. That's all stuff that we've done before. They also want us to come in here and change the size and bump it to about 24. So it's a little bit too big, again, for what we have in here. So that's pretty good. And again, I want to make sure it's fairly centered. There. Okay? All right. Now, that's nothing new. That's all stuff that we've done in earlier chapters. What is new is what we're about to look at right now. The final step, as the author mentions on the bottom of page 15, is to add some layout constraints to ensure that the label remains centered within the containing view regardless of the size of the screen in which the app ultimately will run. This involves the use of the auto layout capabilities of iOS, which is going to be covered in several chapters beginning around chapter 18 or so. So we're going to go into it in a lot of depth and breadth of coverage. It says for this example, simply select the label option. Well, we've already got it selected. Then it says to display the align menu as shown in figure 411. All right, and that's down here. I believe that one is the align menu. Yep, align. So if I click on that, it shows this menu right here. All right? And what we want to do is we want to enable both the horizontally in container and vertically in container options right here with offsets of 0. And then it should say add 2 constraints, as you see right there. Once you've got that, and what you see on your screen is exactly the same as what you see on the top of page 16 in the text. All right, so I'm going to click the button that says add 2 constraints. And there it did. Now you notice it put a bunch of lines in there basically. All right, so it says at this point the view window will hopefully appear as outlined in figure 412. Okay. Now they mentioned before building and running the project, this is again on the bottom of page 16. Before building and running the project, it's worth taking a short detour to look at the Xcode document outline panel. That again, that document outline panel is down on the bottom of our screen. Now it's way in the left-hand corner, way down here, and hopefully you can see that. So I'm going to click, and that opened it up right in here. So when displayed, the document outline shows a hierarchical overview of the elements that make up the user interface layout together with any associated constraints. So you can see now, I've got constraints in here. And if I drill down, it shows me what those constraints are. And you say, well, I can't read that. Yeah, it's because I have to widen this out just a tad. All right, that gets us to page 17. Before an app can be run, it must first be compiled. Once it has been successfully compiled, it may be run either within the simulator or on a physical device. For the purposes of this chapter and for this book, it's sufficient to run the app in the simulator. All right. Within the Xcode 7 project, make sure that the menu up there, again, right here, you know that's our run button right there. All right, after we click the run button, just a couple more things as mentioned on page 17. That's our button to basically stop the program as it's running. Right here is where they have whatever our current simulator is. And I changed it from an iPhone 6S Plus to just an iPhone 6S because that's what they show in the book. Actually, they show an iPhone 6 in the book. iPhone 6, there we go. And finally, we've got the bar up here. And that'll report the progress of the build process along with any problems or errors that would cause the build to fail. Once the app is built, the simulator will start and our app will run. Okay? I always like to save first. What's supposed to happen in here is even if you don't save, when you start the build process, the system is supposed to automatically save for you anyway. I don't like to take chances. I don't like to take chances with this, so I always save it myself. Doesn't take very long, and I think it's worth doing. So let's run it. Should run because we haven't put any code in here yet. We haven't done anything that I know of that that's going to make the project not work. Now, what I do want to show you, though, when we do this run is because we clicked those and created those 2 layout constraints, okay, the label should appear in the center of the screen whether we are in horizontal or vertical orientation. And that's what I'm hoping for once this comes up and starts running. So I'll give it a second. You've seen this before, the fact that my machine, for whatever reason, really appears to take a long time when, at least the first time, when I go to run anything. In fact, sometimes I have to literally come in there and stop the simulator. So quit it, and then start and run the project again, and then it seems to kind of speed up a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. Now I'm going to show you this. This is the bottom of page 17 in the book, where the author says, note that the user interface appears as designed in the Interface Builder tool. And then they tell you to click the stop button, etc. Change the target menu from an iPhone to an iPad Air. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. I don't feel that right now where we are in here, that's that important because we have looked at that kind of stuff before. But I'd like this to run so I can show it to you and do a hardware rotate left to show that the label is centered whether we are in horizontal or whether we are in vertical orientation. So if we can get that done within the next few minutes, I'll be happy. Section 4.6, which starts on page 18, talks about running this on a physical device. All right, that's the top half of page 18. I'm not going to go over that at all. You can switch devices. All right. You can also switch simulators. So you can go into your window and there's a devices menu in there, so you can set this up for almost anything you want. And that's pretty much what's on page 17. All right, you can see this looks like it's starting to get ready. So I'll tell you what, let me jump back into here. So we went in, did the single view app, called it Hello World, went and looked very quickly at our main Xcode screen there. All right, brought up the storyboard file, added a label to it, changed the color of the background, still isn't up. Doggone it. Okay, put our label in there, set our horizontally in container constraint and our vertically in container constraint, left them both at 0. This is all stuff we're going to go over in later chapters. Pretty much when we got done, this is the way that it looked. We went and clicked our button down here in the lower left corner to bring up our Xcode document outline panel. Once we did, we took a very quick look at the stuff that was in there, and in particular, we looked at the constraints that we had set up in this example. And there's our hello world. Okay, doesn't look like it's centered, at least over here, but it does look like it's centered on the page as far as where it's held. And let's do a hardware rotate left, and you can see it's still centered. Okay? All right. All right, let's stop the simulator, go back into here, and I'm going to jump. I'm on page, move up a couple pages here, so we ran it, and dealing with build errors here. As we have not actually written or modified any code, it's very unlikely errors would have been detected. That is possible. Again, if for any reason the build fails, the status will report the error as being displayed in the build together with any errors that it's detected. Okay, it says, in addition, the left-hand panel of the Xcode window will update with a list of errors. Okay, those are typically the ones that are easiest to find. What you find over time is, eventually at least, you'll also see errors in there that are very hard, if not close to impossible to find. All right, monitoring application performance here. Near the bottom of page 19. It says another useful feature is the ability to monitor the performance of an app while it is running. This information is displayed, This information is displayed by displaying the Debug Navigator. And remember that Debug Navigator was over, we've got to open that up. And the Debug Navigator was right here. When Xcode is launched, the Project Navigator is displayed in the left-hand panel by default. Along the top of this, all right, the sixth option it says from the left is the Debug Navigator. Okay, and they mention that when selected, notice there's no debug session because I didn't have any error. All right, but when displayed, this panel shows a number of real-time statistics relating to the performance of the currently running application. All right, well, I'm not running mine either, so nothing is showing right there. But it shows things like memory usage, CPU usage, disk access, network activity, and iCloud storage access. When you select one of those categories, the main panel is shown in figure 421 in your book, updates to provide additional information. So let's look at that. So this is what they're talking about here. That's the one you want to choose. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th one over. Again, that's your Debug Navigator, and it shows you this information. When you select one of the categories as mentioned right there, you get basically an update on what's in there. So in this one, they selected CPU. All right. And bottom of page, I can't really show it any more than this, but the bottom of page 19 in the text. Xcode also provides an option to break the user interface layout into a rotatable 3D view that shows the view hierarchy for how a user interface is constructed. This can be particularly useful in identifying situations where one object is obscured by another appearing on top of it. To access the view hierarchy, it says, run the application and click on the Debug View Hierarchy button as shown here. Right there. So let's try it. Go back to our code. All right, we don't need this open anymore, so let's close that. Run the application. Says that it succeeded. And I'd be lying to you if I told you I knew what I was doing right now because I've never used that before. So here is our program to access the view hierarchy in this mode. Run the app and click on the Debug View Hierarchy button highlighted in that figure. You can see the stuff here now. But I'm looking for a Debug View Hierarchy button, which of course I am not seeing. It's down at the bottom of the screen, and I was looking at the top. Okay, so we've got to look over here and find the debug view hierarchy, which is right there. I'm down at the bottom of the screen. All right, so click that button. It says once activated, a 3D exploded view should appear. It may be necessary to click on the Orient to 3D button that's highlighted here. So the thing that you see down there. Okay. Says figure 424 shows an example layout of a slightly more complex interface than the one that was created in this chapter. So it's something that we can use if indeed we want to. All right. So applications are primarily created using the Xcode development environment. The other way you can do it is to create an application from the either the playground, or you can create it from the command line. Okay. So this chapter was a very brief review and overview of the Xcode environment. So in the next chapter, chapter 5, we're going to go into Xcode playgrounds. I'll be back with that particular example in just a couple minutes.